Hello everyone, this is Elena and I am introducing you to my new fiber art brush set for Procreate today. And I'm really excited about this brush set. I've been working on it for many months and it started out as an idea to create a very broad fiber art brush set, including basically any type of fiber art out there. But I quickly found out that that was too overwhelming, and so I had to narrow it down to a couple of different types of fiber art. And what I landed on was felting and embroidery, along with some embellishments and fabric and string. So felting and embroidery don't always have to go together, but they do go together nicely, which is why I decided to put this all into one brush set instead of having two separate ones. So as with most of my walkthrough videos, I'm going to start out by showing you how to load the files in Procreate. However, if you already know how to do this, you can just skip forward to the part where I explain more about the specific brushes in the set. So once you have downloaded the brushes onto your iPad, they should go into your download folder. So there's an app called the Files app, which looks like this, and you can tap that, or if you can't find it, you can search for it like that. And so once you open the File app, it might be on Recents, but you can always turn on this little side here to see where you're at and go to Locations. And usually the downloaded files will go into iCloud Drive Downloads. And if you are using Google Chrome, they might go into On My iPad instead. So we've opened up iCloud Drive Downloads and we can see the fiber art brush set zip file here. So this is a zip file. You can't open a zip file in Procreate. You have to unzip it first. So to do that, just tap it and then it creates this new blue folder. And then we tap that. And these are all the files that are included in the fiber art brush set. So there are actually there's 4 swatches. So we've got vibrant, fiber art, rainbow, neutrals, and embroidery. These are all dot swatches, and so these are colors. And these 3 are all brush set files. So there's 3 different brush set files included in this because there are so many brushes. We've got the fiber art extras, which includes the embroidery hoop, the textiles, the buttons, and things like that. And we've also got the felting brush set and the embroidery brush set. So in order to load these files into Procreate, you of course have to have the Procreate app installed on your iPad, and then just tap on the files and it looks like nothing's happened. But if you go into the brush icon and then scroll down here, you can see the one that I just tapped on is here at the top. And I'm just going to delete that because I've already got them loaded in here, so I don't want to have multiples. And the swatches are the same way. You would just tap on one of the swatch files. Looks like nothing's happened, but if you go to your colors and then where it says palettes and then scroll all the way to the bottom, I have way too many colors in here. You can see that's the one that I just loaded. And again, deleting that. Okay, let me just show you. Once you've done that with each of those individual files, they need to all be done individually. Then you should be able to see in your colors the fiber art neutrals, the rainbow, the embroidery, and the vibrant fiber art. So these are the 4 color palettes that come with the set. And there are 3 brush set files. All of them need to be loaded separately by tapping each one. So we've got the embroidery, the felting, and the fiber art extras. So a lot of the brushes in all 3 of these folders are dual color brushes, or there are dual color variations. So you can see here, we've got a tiny single stitch, but we've also got tiny single stitch dual color. And wherever it's possible, I've done both versions because sometimes thread comes in multiple colors and you'll be sewing with this thread and it'll come out in 2 different colors. So in order to choose 2 different colors on any of the brushes that say dual color, you would go to this color dot in the top here and go to the disc. So now right below this top dot, you can see there are 2 different colors chosen. This is the primary because it matches with what's up here. And then this was the secondary, but now it's the primary because I selected it and that one's gone up here. Now this one's my secondary. So you can choose either one by just going and finding a color. And now that one's become my primary, and then you can choose a secondary by tapping that and then tapping another color. But I actually really like the red and the orange, so I'm going to keep it at red and orange like this. And that's my primary, that's my secondary color. So now I wanted to go through each of these 3 folders and explain the different brushes within them, how to use them, and so forth. So first, having a look at the embroidery folder, we have 3 different categories. We've got the stamps, we've got basic stitches, and we've got all the way down here, decorative stitches. So this is the biggest of all the folders, and I'll just go through and explain. So we start out with the embroidery hoop, which is also included in the extras in the hardware section, but I just wanted to put it in here because you're going to be using it so much, or some people might use it so much that I wanted to have it handy at the top there. Let me just actually uncover that. So with the hoop, let's just choose like a brown color. The embroidery hoop points with your pen. So the top is going to be wherever you're pointing your pen. And you can always reposition that like this as well if you want. And inside of the embroidery hoop, you might want some embroidery fabric. I'm going to do a much more detailed tutorial on this later, but you'll find the fabric and the textiles inside of the Fiber Art Extras brush, the Fiber Art Extras folder. So you can see there's a lot of different large and small variations of embroidery fabric in here. Okay, so going back to the embroidery folder, the first several brushes here are stamps, and the stamps in this set are special in that they do need to be on their own layer for the best result. And that's because stamps in Procreate usually are a bit transparent, and I've done some special magic on these to make them stand out more so that you can even layer them on top of artwork if you want to. But they do need to be in a separate layer. So let me just show you on this old artwork here, or the cover artwork. Let me show you how that works. Okay, so I've made a whole different separate layer here. Let's say that I want to add a leaf or a twig here on top of this artwork. So I've made this stamp so that it actually shows up on top of this instead of being see-through. Included in here, we've got French knots, we've got these woven roses and some dots and some florals. So we've got all these different leaves, and there are brushes to create dynamic leaves as well further down. But I just wanted to give you the option to have these ready-made leaves here as well. And you can just choose any colors you want. You can also use these as petals. So if you wanted to have like a flower, you could make a flower out of these, and they all tilt again in the direction of your brush or your pen. So you can make a little flower out of those. And one more thing to note about these stamps is that they might come out a little bit darker than what you're planning. So we've got kind of a pinkish color. So this is coming out, if you can see here, comparing a little bit darker than the color that you've chosen. And that's just because of the contrast necessary to make it stand out like it does. If that's happening and you don't like how dark it's coming out, you can go in your colors to the value tab, and then you can make the color a little brighter. You can kind of play around with those, the S and the B, and then you can have a lighter color coming out. And another thing to note about the stamps is that the round ones are kind of random. So let's say we're going to have a lot of French knots over here. If you want to just like stamp them and dot them on, they're all coming out in different directions, you can see. And this is random. And that's because I wanted to make it easy to just kind of stamp them on there. But the stamps that have a top and a bottom, so like this is the top of the leaf, this is the bottom of the leaf, those ones are directional like the hoop. So the top of it comes out at the end of at the tip of your pen, like that. And that is pretty much what you need to know about the stamps. They're just meant to be used kind of on top of artwork that you've already done like this. So I've used some stamps here. and I've used some here and so on. And some of these are stamps as well. So moving on to the embroidery basic stitches. These ones, as far as I can tell, maybe there's a little bit of disagreement about what's basic and what's not, but to me these are the most basic of stitches that maybe can be done by hand, maybe can be done on a machine, but they're just kind of basic stitches. So we've got the single stitch, and there's a lot of different variations on this because I just wanted to give you a lot of different options. They all have a slightly different shape, slightly different texture, and many of these have dual color versions, and some of them also have dense versions. And what I mean by dense is just closer together. So for instance, this running stitch number 3, this one has got 4 different versions, and I've tried to make it really clear which one has the same shape as a base, but just has different variations on that shape. So for instance, we've got running stitch number 3. This is just the normal stitch. And then we have a dual color version of that. So going back here, for some reason I've got red as both my primary and my secondary colors. So what I want to do is make yellow, or just anything, you know, purple, etc., blue, as a secondary color. And so now we've got both of these. And so when we use that, we're getting 2 different colors, and it's a bit hard to see on the light background. You can see it more here. So you can see it comes out kind of randomly between the 2 colors. Sometimes it'll be a mix of the 2 colors. Sometimes it'll be one or the other. So I'm just going to put that there for comparison. And then we've got running stitch number 3, dense. So this, again, is not dual color. It doesn't say dual color in the title, but it's just a denser, let's go back to red, a denser version of that same stitch. So you can see there. And then we have a dual color version of that. We still have these 2 colors chosen. And so let's test that one out here. So we just have a lot of different variations, different kinds of brushes. They're all just slightly different. See, that one has a different shape. This one has a different shape as well. And they're all just based on real stitches, most of which I sewed myself and then took photos of and learned a lot in the process. So those are the running stitches. There's quite a lot of different options so that you can really control exactly how you want your piece to look. And you can see on here on the cover, I've used a lot of different of the running stitches here. So that's your very most basic stitch. And then beyond that, we have back stitch. There's a couple of different versions of these, and these are just the ones that sort of connect to each other rather than being having space between them. And we've got double stitches. These ones didn't really make sense as dual color, so I didn't really include that. I just kind of experimented and tried to figure out what looks good as a dual color brush and what doesn't. And if you see anything missing as a dual color brush, it's probably because I tried and it didn't look good. So we've also got the multi-stitch brushes. These do look great as dual colors. And if you have my mixed media set, I have one that is kind of similar in there. And these are like a more advanced version of that basic concept. So those are a lot of fun as dual color brushes. And in a piece like this where it's just really messy, it's kind of nice to just like add these different stitches to give it a lot of interest. Okay, so that's the multi-stitch. And then moving on from that, we've got split stitch and chain stitch. A couple different kinds of chain stitch. And we've got the blanket stitches. A couple variations on that. And whip stitch. So I'm just kind of showing you all the different stitches we've got here. I spent a lot of time researching what the basic stitches of embroidery are. I'm not a pro. I won't claim to be a pro at embroidery. I really don't know that much about it, but I did a lot of research on it and hopefully have included most of the most important stitches. And if you notice anything glaringly missing, you're of course very welcome to let me know, and I can consider that for a future update. So we've got our zigzags. Most of these also come in dual colors. And I've just tried to make it a lot of sort of stitching brushes will be kind of not super realistic looking, and I really wanted to make these realistic, so that's why they're all based on photos of actual stitches, most of which I did. I can show you some of my homework here. Some of the basic stuff I've been practicing and learning how to do for this brush set, so it's been a lot of fun. So continuing onward, we got our crosses, and these are all directional. They're all following the line of your pen. I've also done some magic on them so that they don't go wonky at the beginning, because a lot of stitch brushes or directional brushes do tend to be a bit funky at the beginning because it doesn't know what direction you're going in. So those are the basic stitches. So then in order to make it easier to navigate, I have designated the rest of the stitches as as decorative stitches. So these are the more fancy kind of stitches, the kind that you might use in order to make florals or to make more complicated pieces. So let's just continue. We've got our herringbone. That is a fun one. It took me a little while to figure out how to do that, but I did. I figured it out, so here we go. And there's a dual color version of that, of course. We've also got the chevron. Lots of fun. And so then we've got satin stitches. And these are used in order to make florals a lot of the time. And sometimes you're going to want stable size, which means that it's all the same size. So if you're going to make something where you want to control the size, then you would use this one. You could even use it to make circles or to make like small expanses. Satin stitch. Or you also have the pressure size version of each of these brushes. And the pressure size means that you use the pressure from the Apple Pencil to decide how big it's going to be. So these ones are great for petals and leaves. So you start out with a fair amount of pressure and then you let up with kind of a flick, and then you have a nice leaf or petal. You can use those to kind of make this kind of thing. That's what I've used those brushes for this flower and that sort of thing. Oops. Yep. Okay, so we have a couple different versions of those, and those don't come in dual color versions because it just looked really messy because they're so close together. But these are really good for florals and for just like more complicated types of embroidery. And then we've also got number 3, which is kind of a fun wonky one that doesn't have, the edges aren't really uniform on this one. And then we have ones that I've actually called wonky, 1, 2, and 3. And these ones do have dual color versions. So I'll show you what those look like. And I meant they're wonky just because they're kind of going every which way like this. So these are just, again, another option. You can use them for petals too if you want. You can see I've used some here. And just another option. Some fun stitching. So moving on from that, we've got our fishbone stitch, and this one is great. We've got 2 different versions of this, and this one is great for, again, for leaves and for petals. Let me just show you in green. That's really small. So again, these are really good with like pressure at the beginning and then flick to end the stroke like that. You can make some really interesting greenery, or you can use them to make petals, longer petals. And we've got the same, different version of the fishbone number 1 that doesn't require this flick at the end, and it's just a stable size. And then we've got another version And maybe I'll show you in green as well. This one again is pressure sensitive. Comes out depending on how fast you're going and how much you're flicking at the end. You can have some different shapes. And we've got a dual color version of that. And that one I thought was fun to have a dual color version because you might want to have a leaf that has a couple different greens in it. So say we have a light green and a dark green. And we can have kind of a varied looking leaf like that. So moving on, we've got Leafy Line. This is not a technical term, and this is not a stitch that you'll find in traditional embroidery, but I just wanted to include it because I thought that it was really fun actually, how it kind of, you can just kind of add leaves like I've done here and just kind of wiggle your pen to like have the leaves coming out randomly like that. And we've also got a dual color version of that. So then we've got our stem stitch. So this one is for creating stems, obviously. And let me just show you how I've used those in some other artwork here. So I have a tutorial on this piece coming up, but I've used the stem stitch here. And this is an actual stitch in real life embroidery as well. So going back to where I was. We've also got feather stitch. Let me just turn these off so I can really show you better what we're doing here. So, so feather stitch is another real life stitch, and this one has both dual color and stable color versions of each. And this one took me forever to learn how to do. It's not, I think maybe some of you are probably really good at this sort of thing, but it took me a while to learn how to do this in real life and then, you know, turn it into something digital. But I really like how it's coming out. So you might do it like with colors like this, just as a decorative thing, or you might use it as stems. So if you're gonna like make something like a vine climbing up, then you could always use it together with some of these French knots, or maybe with a leaf on each end. Like make that really small, like that, or something fun like that. So you get the gist. This can be the base for a lot of things. So moving on, there are two different versions of the feather stitch, and those are just kind of a fun base for florals or for just a decorative edge. And the same thing with the cretin stitch. There's also a dual color version of that. It's just a different variation on a similar look. You can use this as a vine, or you can use it decoratively. Then we've got fern stitch, and there's a lot of different versions of this. We've got the stable size and then the dual color version of that. We've got the pressure size. So the difference between the stable size and the pressure size is that this one, it does vary a little bit with the pressure, but not really a lot. Whereas the pressure size is going to come out, you can have more of a like flick at the end and have it be like more variation in size, like that. And then we've got a dual color version of that. We've also got a dense version of both, and this is just pressure size only on this one, because that's just what worked out best. That's just kind of like a messy, really dense version of that stitch. So moving on from that, there are a lot of variations on this kind of floral looking stitch, and these are all based on real stitches. So this one's called fly stitch. And then we've got a pressure size version of that, same concept as these. We've also got a dense version. And with the ones that say pressure size, it's always good if you go a little bit fast at the end so you get this really nice taper. Then of course we have a wonky version because I love wonky stuff. And then moving on, let me just get to a different part of the page here. We have got a double scallop, And this is just kind of like a decorative edge if you want it. And then we've got our loop leaves. There's two different versions of this and a dual color version of each of those. These are pressure sensitive as well. You can use these like as a kind of a decorative edge around some florals. And let me just... So next up we've got overlock, and there's two different versions of these. That's very large. And there's also dual color for both of these as well. And then we have our circles. And these are like satin stitch circles. So those are the embroidery brushes. There are a lot, and I hope that it's not overwhelming. I have tried to organize it in such a way that it makes sense. You know which one like is the same brush but a different variation on that brush. So hopefully it all makes sense. Hopefully the terminology makes sense. But you're very welcome to let me know if you have any questions, and I'm very happy to help with that. So moving on, let's have a look at the felting brushes. I just want to show you some of the stuff that I've used as a base for some of these brushes. For a lot of these brushes, I just got like this bag full of all these different kinds of fibers, and I've just really been using these as brush sources. So this folder is a smaller folder. There's about 32 brushes in here, which include a dual color version of most of them, or all of them, I think. And that's because a lot of felting fibers come with multiple colors in it. So I wanted to specifically point out that the first 4 in this brush set are really good as backgrounds. You can use them for anything, but they're really good as backgrounds. I'm just going to turn that off for now and show you what I mean. So we've just got like our solid felt background, which you can kind of like draw with it if you have it at a smaller size. But you can also just use it as like the whole background to your piece, and you can have a dual color version of that as well, which just kind of has hints of the other color to give it a bit more texture. And these ones are the messy solid felt is also good for background if you want it to look a bit hairier and just have more texture to it. And you can also draw with that one too, of course. So down here, we've just got a lot of different kinds of fibers that you can kind of weave in and out and just create kind of a tapestry of different kinds of fiber, create something representational or something abstract. And I'll just show you on top of this cover art. I think I made that with the directional multi-fibers brush, but I'm just going to demonstrate some of the brushes on top of this so you can kind of see what they do. Let's maybe go with blue and green. So these brushes will have got a lot of texture. Like if you make them really big, you can have like this big fuzzy curly looking texture, or you can make them small and do like little poofy bits. We've got the directional multi-fibers, which I used to make this piece. You can kind of see kind of waves. We've also got these loose tangled fibers and the barely there fibers. These ones are really good if you just want to have a hint of some fuzz, basically. Like you don't want to really change what's underneath, but like you can just add a little bit and then kind of turn it into this kind of a rainbowy look. Then we've got our curly one, just another variation. The directional line is a good one if you want to draw something representational, or you just want more control. You can have a lot more control with this. So let's say we're gonna like build a house or something. You could do that with this. So it's one of the few of the fiber brushes that you can actually draw with. And of course, it's still gonna be kind of messy. And you know, it's gonna come outside the lines, but it's gonna look like you've made something out of felt. So we've got our matted directional fibers. I'm just going to switch colors again. This one's kind of like if you're wet felting, you can draw with this as well. Cotton fluff. This one's good for clouds, like so. And most of these are pressure sensitive in the size. And we've just got some different variations, different kinds of fibers. We've got our silky tangle and the poofy silk. This one's called dense spread. And we've got our very hairy. So these are all just variations on different kinds of felting textures. You can layer them together to create different textures and different color combinations. You can get a lot of really interesting colors all in the same area like this. So it's very important to just experiment and play with these brushes in order to find out what your style is and what you want to do with them. So lastly, we have the Fiber Art Extras brush set or folder. And this all comes in the same brush set. So this one includes basically anything that I couldn't fit into an embroidery or felting category. So it includes thread and string, rope, yarn, and I'll show you those in a moment. We've also got hardware, button, etc. And then we've got textiles. So this is where your embroidery cloth is and some other fun textile brushes. So let me just add a new layer here and choose a color. Let's go to neutrals. So this is the rope. And that's just like the basic rope that it's getting bigger when I'm using pressure and smaller when I'm not using pressure. We've also got a dual color pressure version of that. So these are a little bit different in that the colors don't come out randomly. In the thread and string brushes, they come out gradually according to how much pressure you are applying. And that the difference is because when you're making stitches with multicolored thread, the thread is going to look a little bit random because you're going to be going in and out and through and around. Whereas when it's a string or yarn, then it's going to be much more continuous and gradual. So you can see what I mean here. Let me just turn that off. So I'm letting up on pressure when it gets brown, and then I'm pressing more when it gets pink. So you can see that I have control over that. It's not changing size with the pressure, it's just changing color. Let me just choose some other colors. So let's choose some more vibrant colors and just see that effect here. So sometimes you're going to get a transitional color in between. You get that purple there between a blue and a pink. And so another similar one here and a dual color version that's the same as above. And we have a funny one called string with fibers. And I'm just kind of picturing like these kind of fun bags of strings that you can see at a craft store. There's going to be something like this sometimes, and it can be a lot of fun. So we have a dual color version of that. These can be used as lettering brushes as well, which might be kind of fun. So I'm just using pressure on the downstrokes in the normal way, but instead of getting fatter, they're just turning blue, like so. And we've also got embroidery thread. You can do the same thing. There's 3 different kinds. So this one is kind of thin. We've got a slightly thicker version. And then we've also got a very thick version, number 3. These are not just for lettering, but they are just meant to look like embroidery thread, and they're made from bits of embroidery thread. So we've got our rickrack. I don't even know if I say that right, to be honest, but you know what I mean. It's just the wiggly thing. And we've got a dual color version of that. And then we've got this woven yarn. I wasn't really sure what to call it. I really liked how it looked, but I wasn't really sure what to call it. So I've called it woven yarn. And then we've got a couple different versions of that. Different textures. And then we've got this macrame sinnet, which I had to Google what it's called, this line of knots that you get in macrame. And let's just try that in a really neutral color so you can kind of see what I mean. It's like the things that you make a plant holder out of. And then there's 2 different versions of that. So those are the strings and the yarns, just a couple different variations of things that can be fun to incorporate into your pieces. And then we have our hardware, and there's not a lot here, but I just wanted to include a couple of things that you might want to include on your artwork. So the important thing, just like with the embroidery stamps, is that you use a separate layer, because some of these are metallic, some of these are not, but all of them want to be in their own layer because they're going to look a bit funny if they're not. So let's say we want a gold sequin. A good color for that is this one, I believe. Yep. So this comes out looking a bit metallic and randomly facing in different directions. You can do that in any color, of course, but you know me, I love gold. So you can do it in like a silver. I tried to make the neutrals kind of good for metallics as well, in the neutral color palette. So then we've got our pearls. Mostly with a stamp, like if it's lighter and darker, you're going to be able to see through it. But I tried to make these so that you can't see through them, so that you can actually like add them as embellishments on a piece like this. And same thing with the beads. So just going to show you that one in kind of a brown color. So that's a bead made out of jasper. We've also got a tiger eye. So those are just kind of fun. We can add them as embellishments as well. And then we've got a geometric metallic bead. And then we've got the embroidery hoop again. This is the same as the other one. It's just, I've just put it in both folders because, I don't know, I just didn't want you to not to be able to find it, basically. So it's in here as well. And then we've got our pom-poms, little fuzzy thingies you can add as well. Oops, running out of battery. And we've got our button. Okay, so the last part of this is the textiles, and we have small and large versions of most of these, except for the knits. I'm just going to make a new layer. Maybe go back to the neutrals and just show you. So what I mean by small and large is that the grain is small and large, because I wanted to have them pressure sensitive, but in order to have pressure sensitive texture brushes, you can't make the grain bigger or smaller as well. So I've just included a big and a small version of each one. So you can choose whichever one goes best with your canvas size. I just wanted to make sure that there were plenty of options. And this one is extremely subtle. Okay, so those are the embroidery cloths. We have also burlap. We've also got crumpled cheesecloth. This one is just kind of fun. Just kind of like if you want to add some really subtle bits of cloth. And then we've also got some knits. Let me just choose some colors. So these come out. These are good for making sweaters. There's a lot of people in the Facebook group that have made some really fun creatures out of these brushes as well. And then we've got our quilted fabric. So this one just has kind of a quilted overlay on it. You've got a small and a large version of that. And then we've got another one, different kind of quilted, like so. And we've got some terry cloth as well, because why not? So that is the Fiber Art Extras brushes. So kind of the idea with the textiles is that, I mean, you can use it as a background to any of this, to the embroidery and also to the felting, or you can add like strips of cloth and then put stitching all over it, kind of like if you would do like scrap, put a bunch of scraps of fabric together and make it into some kind of an abstract art. So that's the idea behind that. So that concludes my little overview of my new Fiber Art brushes. I hope that this has helped you to understand more what's included and how to use it. It's mainly embroidery and felting and a lot of different extra things that can go with that. And I know fiber art is a really broad topic, but these were the types of fiber art that I felt were most conducive to Procreate as a medium, and that were the most creative things to do digitally. So I hope that you enjoy the brushes, and I will definitely be coming out with more tutorials. I've already recorded 2 that I need to get ready, and there will be much more, of course, in the future. So anything that you want to see a tutorial for, please feel free to let me know, and I will see you next time.